offline. But our guest tonight is Greg Joel with Opal Farms. And if you received the newsletter that I sent out, you have a lot of background on him, but I'm not going to preempt his description of his growth into a farm manager. I'll let him explain how he got where he is. But Opal Farms is a commercial farm, one of, I think, 3 in the Better Health program for the Tarrant County Health Department, Public Health Department's Better Living. I think it's Better Living project. And the goal is to develop sources of fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables in food deserts. And Opal Farms is a commercial farm, so they sell their products to customers. And I'll let Greg explain who they are, but I'll let him get going here. So Greg, you can take it away and explain who you are and what Opal Farms is and how the freeze affected you. I'm curious if you have to just kind of say, start over.
I'd rather not talk about that part. My name is Greg Joel. I'm the farm manager for Opal's Farm. And we're a program of Unity Unlimited is our nonprofit. And we broke ground in February 15th of 2019. So we're starting our 3rd year. And it was kind of a fluke that I even found out about this. And to make a long story short, the people that initially contacted me about this received excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I meant to turn that off. Come on. There we go. They received a very unfavorable article in Fort Worth Weekly and kind of dropped off the face of the earth after that. So I contacted Miss Opal directly and asked her what was going on with this. And we met and became, from day one, I guess the rest is history. The water district, Tarrant Regional Water District, gave us 5 acres. Actually, we have a 6.2 acre lease, but it's roughly a little over 4 acres that are farmable. They're at Sylvania. If you know where Riverside and Sylvania split, they're just north of 30. And if you follow Sylvania around to the right where you see the TRE railroad bridge, if you look immediately to the west, you'll see our trailer. We have a container that serves as our barn that was donated to us, and our big sign there. And then there's a gateway. If it's open, you're always welcome to come down. Someone is there. It says no unauthorized vehicles, but if you're coming to the farm, you're an authorized vehicle. So please feel free to just drive on down and check us out. One of the things that I actually had done some community garden work about 15 years ago. I ended up I had an industrial accident and had to take a retirement disability. And from what I was doing, and I left and worked with Samaritan House, which is a nonprofit providing housing for HIV positive individuals who are homeless. And we started a back to work program called Hope Works. And Hope Works became very successful. I kind of headed up the landscaping end of that, and we did a couple of gardens for Samaritan House. And it grew so quickly. In fact, we had at one time 3 crews going, and they did not want to be in that kind of business, to have that many employees, contract employees. So I bought them out and was a contractor for several years. Grew into also doing remodeling, but mostly outdoor kitchens. And in the process, I'd done a lot of work for some other nonprofits doing community gardens. We did one in Como, 5 years ago, and did that for Dr. Brown and Burn Ministries. They own some vacant property in the Como area. And I always tell this story because it's one of the reasons when I found out about this, I really jumped on it. Dr. Brown's young men that were in the summer program, after school in the summer program, came out to help harvest when our tomatoes came in. It was about the time they came out. And one of the kids, who was probably about 12 or 13, middle schooler, he looked at me and pointed to a plant and he says, "What's that?" And I looked at it and it was a tomato. And to be honest with you, it kind of took me back. I thought everybody knew what a tomato was. And he said, I told him it was a tomato. And he said, "I thought they came out of cans." He'd never seen a fresh tomato. And so I did some cajoling and had to dare him and all that good stuff. We're being an organic farm. I just kind of rubbed it off on my pants and said, dared him to take a bite. He finally convinced him to take a bite. And if you had seen the look on that young man's face when he tasted what a tomato really tastes like, and then he asked, "Can I have another one?" And we ended up taking some home that day. But I tell that story because that kind of response is what we hope to get from a lot of young people in what we provide. The farm is set up under the nonprofit. We do have to, just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean we can't make something. We have to have enough to be economically sustainable. So our business model is we take 10% of everything we grow, and that automatically, that's kind of our, we are not necessarily faith-based, but we practice, and our faith calls us to exercise that 10% as kind of like our tithe. And we give that to the community food bank that's in the United Riverside neighborhood where we're located. And we've also helped out with a couple of churches over the last couple of years. And particularly this last year with COVID, the demand has just been incredible. And then we take the remainder, and I'm gonna just the remainder, 50% of the remainder is our retail, and we sell that at Cowtown Farmers Market. We take all that produce and go to Cowtown and sell that at farmers market prices on our retail side, and that helps the farm be economically sustainable, so that we can reinvest that money and also subsidize the other 50% that goes to neighborhoods that don't have access to fresh produce. We started initially with United Riverside. We also do the WIC markets. We're working with the Tarrant Area Food Bank and Cowtown Farmers Market to provide produce for WIC participants. The Texas Department of Agriculture gives them a voucher for fresh produce to each member of the family, and they do about they issue about $7,000 in vouchers a week. And we actually pretty much most of the weeks will be at Cowtown, out on the west side. That's out on the old Meadowbrook traffic circle, if you know where the old Frank Kent dealership. We also will go out and we'll go to Miller and Berry. That's a big area for the farmers market. We have a lot of WIC participants in that neighborhood. And so we sell that portion as well to the neighborhood. Plus we do pop-ups. Doc Sessions Community Center on Sylvania is part of the United Riverside neighborhood, and we'll be doing our subsidized produce there. The advantage with going through Cowtown is that we can each sell to SNAP participants, which is the old food stamp program. So that helps us get money to the people who need it, or get food to the people who need it. And they can use their SNAP dollars to go ahead and purchase that produce. Just as an example, in our first year, we started with nothing. And while we have a 6.2 acre lease, we had to start with 1 acre. Manpower wise, it's just impossible to manage more than that. And we didn't have our cadre of volunteers to help and we weren't able to start hiring anyone yet. So in our first year, I had one volunteer, and we started with raised beds. We do that with the BCS tractor, which Linda's Healthy County Collaboration provided for the farms and the 3 farms in Grow Southeast. And we built raised beds with furrows between each bed. We pump from the river. We were able to purchase a pump, and the water district allows us, so our irrigation is free, which is really nice. And being on district property, we didn't have some of the ordinances that if y'all wanted to start one on city within the city limits, typically you would have to deal with the urban agriculture, urban community garden ordinances that the city of Fort Worth puts together. But we were kind of exempt from those, so we were able to get started sooner. We didn't have to go through that process. We did the first acre, and we did a spring crop and a fall crop. And in that first year, we did 3,500 pounds of food from that acre. That enabled us to get, as a nonprofit, to help us with foundation grants, and we were able to purchase some soil amendments, Microlife, which is a great organic fertilizer. And on that same acre, the following year, instead of 3,500, we produced almost 8,000 pounds of food. We did, I want to say 1,700 pounds just in tomatoes. And of course, they were a huge seller at both Cowtown and in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood markets as well, the WIC markets as well. This year, we've actually expanded to another full acre. Zimmer Kubota donated one of their rental tractors to us. And so we've been able to, that has really shortened my time. I was having to do everything with a walk behind, a large BCS truck, but it's a walk behind. And so it was very slow building the infrastructure and then replanting all our beds every season. And so now we can do that a little easier because we have a full-size tractor, and we have both a subsoiler, which helps break up the soil, very similar to what's called a chisel plow. If you've ever watched a farmer out plowing his field, they're using a chisel plow that goes down about sometimes up to 12 inches and lifts that soil up and fluffs it up before they actually till it over or prepare it for planting. And so we do that with each of our beds because that helps with water retention. And then we till the very top portion and cover them with compost. Last year, in our first year, we actually started being able to do our own compost. We did buy a lot from Silver Creek Materials, and they are excellent. Their compost is wonderful. I will tell you, if you ever want to get soil from them, just go ahead and get the compost, because the premium soil mix, which is supposed to be a combination, is not near as good. We prefer the compost, and it's actually a little cheaper too. So that's always good for us. So, but that's really kind of the history of Opal's. She had been, I don't know if you're familiar with Miss Opal, but she's 94. I wish I had half the energy that she does. And she is very much a legend in Fort Worth, and with the National Juneteenth Committee and the National African American Museum. She is a civil rights leader and community activist, particularly in United Riverside, but she's helped the Juneteenth celebrations in Fort Worth really build up to a big deal. And they're trying, she's in her third, at 94, she's in the middle of her third walk to DC to petition for a Juneteenth federal holiday. And she was at the National Press Club a couple weeks ago, and it looks like we have enough Senate and House support to actually have that passed finally. So hopefully that'll become a reality for our for her especially, but That's something, one of the other programs our nonprofit works on.
What is it that is about to be passed? I'm sorry. I missed
It's a
that.
national holiday for Juneteenth.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm. So it'll become a federal holiday. Right now it's recognized in 47 states, but it's not a federal holiday. But that's kind of the history of the farm and where we're at. We're real excited about the third year. We just added our second acre, and we're doing a third of an acre in cantaloupe and a third of an acre in watermelon, because those are high profit. The profit margin is higher on those items, and that helps us with being able to subsidize the produce that we take to the neighborhood. So.
Okay, I'm curious, how do you have a farming background, or
Actually,
how did you? I mean,
actually, in my corporate life, I was a process engineer. I grew up. My granddad used to own Shep's Nursery over on Berry for many years until he closed that. So I grew up around growing things and working in the nursery, and I spent my summers with my uncle who had a ranch in South Texas, down by Victoria, and so I spent my summers farming in their farm garden and on the ranch with him. And my other uncle has a dairy farm up around Keeter, which is halfway between Springtown and Boyd. And so I had some country, and growing up in Fort Worth, you can't help but have a little bit of country in you. And so we always had that. I always had, in fact, my mother, when I started building community gardens, the one at Samaritan House, they had the Star Telegram was there, and that she barged in on the reporter while he was talking to me and said, I used to punish him by making him go out and pull weeds, and now he does it for a living. So it's just something I kind of fell into. Gardening is real different from farming. I hear a lot of people go, I'd love to work. I'm a gardener. And those are transferable skills. But I will tell you, when I first came around the corner, when we'd first broken ground, and the district came in and actually plowed the whole 5 acres. And I came around the corner and saw it for the first time, and I thought, what in the world have I gotten myself into? I almost wanted to turn around and run because it was just overwhelming. But we've taken it as we have the labor, and the learning curve was rather steep, but we've really done well, surprisingly well, and I'm excited about what this year has in store for us. Now the freeze came along. We actually, one thing I would tell you, we've actually, now my nonprofit often means non-paying. So I have a retirement income. So I wasn't dependent on that. And I won't say I work for free, but I don't think I've ever gotten my salary from the farm account. That has actually come from other accounts within Unity Unlimited. But I will tell you, if you took my salary out of the equation completely, the farm actually was profitable last year, just barely broke even, but it was slightly profitable. Mm-hmm. And for a farm to do that in a second year is pretty amazing.
It is.
So we've been really blessed. And I had the budget set aside to make the expansion and to replant for spring. We took a little bit of a hit when the freeze came. We lost our turnips. We lost everything except spinach and chard, basically. And I left my onions in because I had just planted them. Onions usually go in about the 1st of February. And had it been a day or two or even 4 days of hard freeze in a row, it would have been one thing. But when you get 2 weeks of it, The onions really struggled, and I thought I had lost them all. But we got that rain the following weekend, and I came back out and everything was green again.
Right.
So,
Well, farming will test your faith.
It does. Yes, ma'am. You know, it's
You
funny.
have to have a lot of faith to be a farmer for an extended period. My husband is family were farmers. And
okay.
It is not for the faint of heart.
No.
You have to have a really strong commitment to being on the land to do it.
Well, and that's one of the things with the farm too. We and I got to tell you, working for Unity, Miss Opal, her granddaughter Dion Sims is our executive director, and it's very much like working with family. And so I know that it's Opal's farm, that it's a nonprofit. But one of the things I've noticed with even some of our volunteers is that they take a real pride of ownership in the farm, and that commitment to being there really makes a difference in how you grow. And and you know, the thing that we're trying to get to is to let people know that urban farming is an option, especially for young people. The average age of a farmer in Texas right now is 59.
It can be very lucrative.
It can.
If you have a market, a specific market you're catering to.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to be, isn't it primarily restaurants and that where you can make your
Actually, ours has been retail customers. Now we do have Ellerby's Fine Foods over on Magnolia. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but Molly, the owner and the chef there, she truly is, I think, other than maybe Bonnell's out on Southwest side, she is truly a farm to table. Everything she buys at Cowtown Farmers Market. And to be a member of that market, you have to be within a 150-mile radius of Fort Worth. And you can't resell like they do at other farmers markets where they bring stuff up from South Texas and resell it through a farmer. We're truly a local farmers market. So everything she gets, and her menu changes based on what's in season and what's available. And so we do have restaurants that purchase through there, but the bulk of our retail is individuals. We've been at Cowtown now, starting our third year, and it's a nice little community there. We have regulars.
Where is that? Most people, I know where it is, but others don't.
If it's on Southwest Boulevard, right at Altamira and Southwest Boulevard, the old Meadowbrook traffic circle at the end of Southwest Boulevard there, and it's on the northeast corner, northeast section of that, and we have that every Saturday, 365 days a year. We have that every Saturday, year round, I'll put it that way, on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon. And then in the summertime, once June gets here and more is coming in, we'll also have that on Wednesdays, and that'll carry through usually to the middle of September. So
do I understand that some of this produce goes to the community as a donation?
Yes, that's what we take to the community food bank. The community food bank serves about 500 people a day, 500 families a day. And we try to take we take 10% right off the top because we believe that needs to be done. And the rest then is what's subsidized, but we do take that to the community food bank. We've also shared that with a couple of local churches. We pick up compost. We pick up cold produce from Elrod's grocery store over on the north side, and from Foodland at Rosedale and Ayers. We take that and we do our own composting as well. And we're keeping about 600 to 700 pounds of food a week out of the dump. That we're actually reusing that, recycling that into good, healthy compost. And I say that too because being as close as we are to the missions and the large homeless population, it's embarrassing when you see what gets thrown away, what's wasted, because usually I get several food boxes of fresh produce that I can leave out. We actually have people that come by on Monday evening after we're gone from the farm, and they pick them up and take them. So somebody's getting the benefit too of getting to eat what would normally be wasted, but it's still good, great food.
Hi, Greg. This is Cameron here.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask you to speak a little bit more about the WIC and SNAP benefit programs and how they can actually purchase. Is that at the farmers market, or how is that in conjunction with your program?
This year, we are doing, actually, Ternary Food Bank is what they call the contracting authority. We are working in conjunction with them and the Texas Department of Agriculture, and they have what's called a farmers market nutrition program for WIC participants. So, and WIC is Women's, Infants, and Children. And so they issue a voucher book, and it doesn't seem like very much. It's $30, which is almost a little shameful because that amount of the voucher hasn't changed since sometime in the late 70s. But they issue that to each member of the family. So if there's a mother and 5 small children, they're actually, each one of those participants is getting a $30 book. They issue those vouchers at the market, so they can turn around and go to any of the vendors, approved vendors at the market, and give those and get fresh produce. One of the things that the Texas Department of Agriculture requires is that those, and this is one of the things we don't necessarily, for a for-profit farm, it's a great deal, but for us, it's not, because our mission is to make sure that these people get, that underserved people or low-income communities get that food. But the Department of Agriculture requires that we sell everything in either $3 or $6 increments, and that we sell them at normal farmers market prices. Now, excuse me, normal farmers market prices are not what people in WIC participants are used to paying for vegetables. When they do have the opportunity to go to a Walmart neighborhood grocery or to Foodland or to Elrod's, you know, the same thing. If I'm selling collards for $3 for 12 ounces, when they can go buy, you know, up at 77 cents a pound, you know, it's kind of shocking to them. So one of the things we do is we actually increase the amount that we give them for that money. That helps us with our mission as well, but not all the for-profit farms can't do that. So kind of help answer your question, Cameron?
Yes, thank you. I love this. I'm going to do some more research on Opal herself too. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Love for you too. And I will kind of leave in the chat box. We have a couple of course, our website. Miss Opal has a couple of websites as well, so you can learn a little bit about. And Opal's Farm has a Facebook page also, and then @Opal's Farm is our Instagram and Twitter. So.
Oh, great.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know on the east side of Fort Worth, we have a dearth of grocery stores. And I've always yearned for a farmer's market on this side of town. I've been to several other sides of town and in other communities that are really wonderful in the sense they not only have fresh produce, but they are a community gathering spot. You know, it's a kind of a hopeful thing. We have a community garden here, Eastside Community Garden. I'm curious whether there's any thoughts to having a retail option, maybe on this side of Fort Worth.
There actually is. Right now, I can tell you that, and it's relatively close, just the other side of Lancaster, but TWU Texas Wesleyan is getting ready to, and you know, they've done a lot more redevelopment there, and made it, they're wanting to make it more favorable to have some foot traffic through the Texas Wesleyan area, in that part of Rosedale in particular. And so they have actually talked to us, excuse me, I'm so sorry. They have talked to us about doing a farmer's market there this spring. We probably won't have the volume until we really start our summer harvest. So it'll probably be the middle of May before that happens. But they've talked to us. They've talked to some other artisans, and we do have some artisan work at Cowtown Farmers Market, but primarily it's all farmers and ranchers. And so they've talked about that there. They've kind of been researching some of the other farmers markets that are around. I think Clear Fork, and there's one up in Keller. And so, but you're right, there is not anything in East Fort Worth. And that's actually the direction that we're hoping to move. United Riverside was the first area because we're part of that neighborhood, and we wanted to deal with that neighborhood first. But then 76104, the zip code that's immediately south of us, historic Southside, 76104 is the unhealthy zip code in the state of Texas. Life expectancy there is 10 years shorter than for the rest of the state. And much of that's because of the chronic disease that's caused by bad nutrition and poverty. But we've also looked there. So there's a possibility that there'll be a location opening up as we get more farms online. That's the big thing, is being able to provide the amount of produce that's necessary to keep. It's one thing to have stuff in season and be there for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you get the summer doldrums and it drops off and people don't see you and they don't come back in the fall. That's typically what will happen. So it's real important that when anyone makes a commitment to a farmer's market in the neighborhood, that you show up on at least a fairly, it doesn't have to be every week, but if it's every month, to be consistent so that people know they can start coming there and that you're going to be there. And that's been probably the hardest thing. That's why we're trying to get so many more people involved in urban agriculture in Fort Worth.
I know Linda Fulmer told me that it takes like 2 years to set up a commercial urban farm in Fort Worth. Is that right? Because of the permitting, or is that the worst case scenario?
That's the worst case scenario, I think. The ordinances do make it difficult. There's, what can be seen, and I don't know, Fort Worth, thank goodness, is very big on keeping their trees and native plants, and urban forestry gets involved. I mean, there's a series that you have to go of hoops that you have to jump through. And the problem we've had in the past with them, thank you. The problem we've had in the past with them is because Fort Worth is really starting to look at redoing these urban garden, urban agriculture ordinances, is that you get every time, if you see a different person, when you go back in because you've met the requirements the last person told you to do, the next person says, oh, you need this. And so we've kind of begun to streamline that a little more, and it's become a little easier in the permitting process. And there's been a little more communication inside the city as well. So I would, and I guess too, the one thing, if you're looking at land that you're wanting to set aside, community gardens are a little easier to do than an actual urban farm. They don't require the same permitting. but they do have certain things, like you can't, if you have compost, it has to be behind a fence. If you have, it can't be seen from the street, things like that. But they're a little more flexible with gardens, community gardens, depending on how much of, and this is where it gets, and I'm going to plead a little bit of ignorance because I can't remember the figures, but it depends on what percentage of your growth is for retail and what percentage is for the people in the community that actually work the garden. There's a group that actually I just had the privilege of meeting a couple months ago. They do work in, they're called Southside Community Gardens, and they actually work in the 76104 zip code. And one of the things that's happened with the city of Fort Worth is you can actually grow vegetables now in your front yard. Used to be you couldn't do that. They didn't want to see that kind of stuff going on, but they've opened that up. And more people are beginning to garden at their home. And one thing that I've talked to a couple people about is that they are looking at doing similar to a co-op or a sharing. If one person is using their front yard, their property to grow tomatoes, and then their neighbor down the street has got a little garden that's doing okra. Everybody begins to pool what they're growing, and they have kind of like a co-op shares. So there's a lot of different ways to address some of the growing without having to have a huge amount of land.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, when I used to travel back in the day, when my husband and I would go, particularly to Canada, I mean, they were growing vegetables up the size of buildings, on the tops of in skyscrapers. I mean, every usable area had some kind of green product on it. Some of it was vegetables, some of it was just decorative, but it was not only attractive, but it's good for the environment and produced a product. And it just seems like, I hear you about the communication with the city. It can be a little confusing for all of us. So they have to work on that, and I'm sure they will. It's just sometimes finding the right person is the trick. But I'm really heartened to hear about TW, and I'll look forward to hearing more about that.
Well, keep your eye out, because and what I'll do is I'll be happy to send Carol a notice when we get a date.
Oh yeah, please do.
Idea of when that'll happen, because I know Eastside has been just, when you go through Eastside and you realize we're part of Grow Southeast, which is a effort from Commissioner Brooks' office for the southeast part of Fort Worth, and you're looking at 27 square miles in one grocery store.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Linda. I wasn't sure what the situation was when you include East Fort Worth. I think it's 72 square miles and like 4 grocery stores. So there's really a need, and quite honestly, growing up in the east side of Fort Worth, does not always get the funds for development, for all of those things to help. And so much of the demographics has changed that some of the farms that were there when I was young just aren't there anymore. And you're right too with a farmer's market, and this is what we hope to see, because this is the ultimate goal. We want to feed people, but the ultimate goal is to create community. And I will tell you that, like at Cowtown Farmers Market, it is a community. You see the same people every week. This year with COVID, we saw a lot more people come in because of the initial, the shortage scares and everything that happened. And they've kept coming back. The whole atmosphere is much more relaxed than if you go to the grocery store. And people, because they see each other every week, they begin to know each other, and they talk, and they spend time they talk to them, and relationships happen. And that's what we want to see as a nonprofit, in keeping with our mission, is that not only are we getting that good produce out there and addressing the needs of the community, but actually helping build community. So.
Well, that's a wonderful sentiment to end on, and I hope you will keep us informed.
Thank you.
Because it's really important. I think food is a great equalizer, and it's a way to get people around the table to talk to each other who might not otherwise communicate. And that part of our association is missing for good reason, but it's been missed, not to be able to sit around the table with your neighbors and catch up. So being able to go to a farmer's market and be able to ooh and all over the vegetables is just a great idea, and it sounds like fun. And I hope you'll just keep us in the loop, and we'll share
most
widely.
Most certainly.
Well, it's wonderful that you were with us. And are there any other questions? I'm sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions, so anyone else?
I don't think so.
Thank
Well,
you.
go ahead, Cameron.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. This is so great. I personally, I come from farmers on my dad's side, and since we've moved, we haven't found our farmers market, and I'm excited to go to at least try out Cowtown, but I can't wait to see it grow.
That we hope to see it grow. And I meant to tell you too, we also we've reached out to some of our neighbors nearby, and we do some delivery. We try to let people know what's and we also do you can, like, if you wanted to put in an order and swing and tell us what day. We generally harvest, because we go to market on Saturday. We usually harvest on Thursday and Friday. And once season really gets started and we have some things, we'll set stuff aside if somebody's doesn't want to go all the way to the other side of Fort Worth to get to the market, but they want to come by the farm and pick it up. We're more than happy to do that. We do some very local delivery immediately in the United Riverside neighborhood to some of our elderly neighbors that don't get out. But we're always, and we also have a you pick. I mean, if you want to come down and harvest your own stuff, we'll make you a deal.
Oh, how fun! I used to pick strawberries as a kid.
Oh man,
my dad would force me to pick strawberries.
I felt so bad with the freeze. We had one of our farmers just bought and put in the ground 100,000 strawberry plants, and lost the whole shebang. So.
I might, with your permission, I would like to share your information, your name, and your
yes, ma'am.
Your background with Megan Lash, who is a developer who just opened a senior affordable housing senior center in East Fort Worth over in Oakland.
Wonderful.
It's we worked with her as an association very closely.
Okay.
I mean, she even asked us what color to paint the thing. We're like, at that point, we're like, you have good taste. We know you can handle it. But it was she's a very collaborative and open person, and she's looking for ways to help her tenants. And she got 100% leasing just almost immediately. So she's got like, what is it, 66 units?
Oh, wow.
And 1 to 2 people in each unit over in Oakland. And it's all people over 55.
Okay.
So there's a certain number of units that are market rate and a certain number that are not, that are based on an affordability equation. But I think she'd be very interested, because her tenants might like to have access to vegetables, and since we have a dearth of grocery stores, they might be interested. It's so close, it might be a good outing.
Well, and two, if they want to, and I know we're running short on time, but I need to share this, since you mentioned that. One of the things There was a study several years ago, and I mean it's back in the early 2000s, that they did with a company, a corporation that owns 650 nursing homes around the country, and they began to put community gardens in those little gardens for the residents to come work in, and assisted living centers, not just nursing, but this really neat thing began to happen once people began to get out and start working. Their requirements, their medication needs fell by 82%.
Huh. Cool.
Their satisfaction, their quality of life improved, and I can't remember the exact percentage right off the top of my head without seeing the study. But what they found is that because people were becoming more social, they became more healthy. Mm-hmm. And so we would love to see that happen too, for and work with anyone who's willing to. We are looking for those kind of collaborations. So thank you very much.
Okay, I'll pass on your information, and I'll let her make that move, but I'll explain what we discussed.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
You can go further.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you all
Thank you
for being here. I'm sorry Ramiro had to drop out. Sounds like his baby was calling. But thank you all for being here, and we will post a recording later.
Thank
and I will adjourn this meeting. It may give me a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Everyone say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. I appreciate you, Greg, for being here, and it's so nice to have a chance to talk with you.
Likewise, Carol.
And good luck.
Thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
good luck.
Appreciate it. Hope to see you soon. Take care.
Yes, that would be great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
You too.
That was really